Another scouting mission, another dead end. Tani ruffled, her feather wilting in disappointment as her exploratory ship exited FDL Drive. According to the Galactic Coalition's extensive orbiter mapping, the planet designated GJ-1273C seemed like a promising candidate to establish a new avian outpost. Initial satellite scans revealed a rocky globe with seas, scattered vegetation, and moderate temperature zones, potentially habitable. But as Tani entered high orbit around the remote world, it became clear this was no oasis. GJ-1273C's oceans were dim mercury pools. Under a dense shroud of noxious vapors, jagged peaks jutted through fast-moving storm systems, racked by lightning strikes. Tani's sensors barely penetrated the planet's perpetual haze to show volcanic rifts glowing malevolently beneath the cloud layer. She ruffled her feathers in resignation. The planet was classified Type 3, volatile and ruined. Her people seeking refuge from their dying home world would find no shelter here. She prepared to note the disappointing findings for retrieval by the next Coalition scout ship in this sector, then paused. A faint transmission. No, impossible. The planet was deemed devoid of sapient life, yet her comm receiver was detecting a repeated signal. Tani adjusted the frequency, filtering out background radiation noise. The signal resolved into complex patterns, clearly artificial in origin. But what species could evolve and survive in this furnace? Curiosity overcame protocol as Tani traced the signal to the northern magnetic pole. She had to investigate and discover the source. Braving scalding acidic updrafts, Tani set her ship down on a rocky plateau. Breathable air ratings were unexpectedly positive outside her cracked cockpit window. She would risk a brief external survey in her protective exosuit while the ship recharged to escape this hellscape. Her cooling unit strained against the external temperature over 200 degrees C as she descended the landing ramp. Beyond the cleared landing zone, bizarre lifeforms dotted the acidic slopes. Spiky black growth surrounding creepers with smoldering red foliage. The trees and peaks surrounding her landing site were wreathed in noxious yellow smog. Then her eyes adjusted to the haze obscuring the distance. Was that architecture? Weaving between the bizarre flaming vegetation, Tani spotted the alien construct, some form of shelter or installation, clinging to the mountainside. Approaching what appeared to be an entrance, she detected encrypted data channels, radiation signatures, heat plume, and the signal. Louder here. The structure was clearly inhabited. But by what? There were no lifeform ratings. Sudden vibrations shook pebbles by her feet. Tani turned to see a steaming chasm open in the mountain behind her, belching acrid gases into the rancid air. She needed to retreat, but she had to know. Fighting her survival instincts, she pounded on the alien door. No response. She activated her suit's decoding algorithms on the entrance console, triggering the opening mechanism. With a grinding screech, the door slid partially open, shoving a pile of detritus before it jammed. Her exosuit sensors flashed warnings as she squeezed through the gap into the dark interior. Meeting's visitor. Tani jolted, her scaly flesh crawling beneath her suit. She fumbled for a light orb, bathing the chamber in pale violet glow. Stepping from the shadows was a bipedal male, his bearded face crinkling as he smiled, amber eyes glinting with curiosity, not fear. His protective suit was incredibly archaic by her standards. Welcome. Please excuse the mess. We don't get many guests dropping by. I'm Dr. Eric Gunnerson, geobiologist and astroclimatologist, recently assigned here by the Global Science Consortium. And whom do I have the honor of addressing? It took Tani's universal translator a moment to interpret his rapid, strangely accented speech. These words were coming from a seemingly primitive alien wearing an inferior environmental suit. And yet he acted unaware of any danger or surprise at her sudden appearance. She ruffled her feathers nervously. I am Lieutenant Tani of the Coalition Scout Service. Please explain, how are you surviving this atmosphere? What species are you? His mouth split into another perplexing grin. Ah, an interstellar visitor. Well, you certainly picked a poor spot for shore leave. This planet would kill an unprotected human in seconds. I suppose we prevail here due to a certain knack for adaptation. Please, would you care to take off that heavy exosuit and join me for recap? Tani bristled in disbelief. Remove my protective gear. The toxic volcanic gases permeating this facility would quickly overwhelm my respiratory system. I regret I cannot linger here. The human shrugged good-naturedly. Understood, duty calls. I'm comfortable enough for now. My colleagues are establishing an atmospheric processor nearby to make things more accommodating. Can I help you with anything before you go? Go. There were still so many questions. These bizarre humans seemed capable of surviving nearly anywhere. She had to learn more. Why do you build outposts on such dangerously inhospitable worlds? We're clearly technologically skilled enough to colonize more suitable planets. The human called Eric gave her a thoughtful look, then gestured out the dust-encrusted viewport at the fiery vegetation and rolling storms. Worlds like this. They remind us of where we came from, the crucible of our evolution. We learn to survive virtually any environment across the eons, no matter how challenging. Humanity arose on an untamed world where cataclysm, upheaval, and calamity were and still often are the norm. He gazed out at the raging volcano, venting nearby as if admiring a sunrise. Our ancestors evolved across millennia, enduring everything this planet can throw at us and worse. Biting cold, scorching heat, toxic gas, rushing floods, starvation, and more. So now we feel at home on the very world's most species call unlivable hellholes. Eric turned back to Tani, his eyes bright with scholarly enthusiasm. That indomitable urge to expand, explore, and endure is central to the human identity. It's embedded in our very DNA after millions of years overcoming adversity. Tani studied the strange, soft, smooth-skinned human with new respect. His ignorant recklessness was clearly actually racial hardiness. His eccentric people sounded almost engineered for survival. Her feathers quivered excitedly. Perhaps her avian clans could negotiate sanctuary on the humans' living spaces after all. She would be returning home with truly astonishing reports about this absurdly hardy species. Dr. Eric, on behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I officially designate your species as survival-grade Type 1 organisms. Well done. The avians may be in contact regarding a habitat accord once I file my stellar charts. For now, though, I really must take my leave before the storms worsen. The bearded human blinked, then let out a hearty belly laugh. Well, thank you kindly. I'm starting to think you Coalition folks could teach even us stubborn humans a thing or two about managing climate extremes. Feel free to stop by again. Our door is always open, even on hell worlds like this. He squeezed her armored shoulder amiably as she grimaced at the unwanted contact. Collecting another valuable survival data sample, she squeezed back out the blocked doorway onto the scorched mountain slope now lashed by sulfurous rain. Pausing on the landing ramp, Tani gazed back at the human research outpost, still amazed any species could carve out an ongoing presence in such a nightmare domain. Eric's people were either astonishingly bold, incredibly foolish, or perhaps some sublime balance of both. Either way, the galaxy had clearly underestimated humanity's impressive adaptive abilities. She would be returning to Coalition Command with a truly momentous update, and hopefully news of a new refuge for her people. Maybe they had finally found new partners tough enough to survive the approaching interstellar storms.